Hey, it's the Fantasy Flow podcast. It's been a minute. We missed y'all, but we what we have today is some face melting stats that you need to know for 2025. All these stats I researched and compiled, and they just really jumped off the page to me. And they're all from 2024, last season, and I find them really informative for 2025 as we look at, team projections, win totals, and fantasy football. Right, Andy? This is going to be hopefully a quicker episode. We'll see, but I'm just going to throw some stats at you that I was just like, oh my god, like I gotta share this with whoever's listening to our show.
Let's do it.
All right, so the first face melting stat that you need to know for 2025 is about the Buffalo Bills and their turnover margin last year. Okay, some stats in the NFL, player stats, team stats, some are stickier than others when it comes from like year over year, right? Like if a team's really well coached, you'll see that there's like a trend with that under that coach or certain players, just a really efficient quarterback, you're going to see kind of a trend. One of the least sticky stats year over year is turnover differential, because that is both your offense turning the ball over and your defense forcing turnovers. And it's a weirdly shaped ball. It bounces the wrong way. Another team recovers a fumble, another team doesn't. A tipped pass, maybe the DB picks it off, maybe it falls incomplete. There's a fluky element to turnovers, and that's borne out in the stats. I went back and I looked at 2022, the top 10 teams in turnover differential. So that's turnovers forced minus turnovers created. So we're taking into account both offense and defense. So in 2022 to 2023, only 5 out of the 10 teams remained in the top 10 in both years. And no team had a better turnover differential than positive 13. So they forced 13 more turnovers than they committed. From 2023 to 2024, only 3 teams remained in the top 10. One of the new teams in 2024 was the Buffalo Bills, who were not in the top 10 either of the previous 2 years, and then suddenly they jumped to plus 24 in the regular season. So, Andy, that's like in 17 games, you have a positive 24 turnover margin. That's insane. Like, what did you think of when you saw that?
Yeah, I remember that being a part of their success from last year. So I wasn't too surprised by that. But the fact that they hadn't been in the top turnover margin in the past 2 years, that's what shocked me.
Yeah, it's tough. And I'll tell you something else. Plus 24 is the best turnover margin the league has seen since 2012.
13 years.
The New England Patriots, who had plus 25, and they just had that elite defense, remember? And then the next year, that went from plus 25 to plus 9 the following year. So now we have this huge outlier number. And by the way, second place last year was the Pittsburgh Steelers. They had 8 fewer. So it was like half of the league is right around like plus or minus 6. That's kind of like the middle 16 teams in the league were between plus 6 and minus 6. So the Steelers were honestly an outlier at plus 16, but then the Bills were plus 24. So it was just insane. Like everything went their way. Credit to them, credit to the defense for generating turnovers, and credit to the offense for not. I mean, that's why Josh Allen won MVP. I mean, there's lots of reasons, but like he took care of the ball way better than he ever has before. I don't think Josh Allen lost a fumble. James Cook couldn't have lost more than 2. Like, it was just an amazingly efficient year. That's not going to happen again. That's my whole point, was like, golf clap for the 2024 Buffalo Bills, but like, it's not going to happen again. It's just a weirdly shaped ball. This is not a sticky stat. I just think we're going to see a massive regression when it comes to this stat and to the efficiency of the offense in particular. I think Josh Allen, he's shown who he is at this point, and last year was just an oddly efficient year where he was so safe with the football. I don't see that being the norm. Definitely, history suggests that this is a crazy outlier. So I don't know, Andy, what do you think when it comes to the AFC East and their win total and Josh Allen for fantasy? Like when you hear these stats?
Yeah, I'm not worried about Josh Allen for fantasy. Sure, maybe he has 2 fumbles this year instead of the 1 that he had last year or something like that. But really what sticks out to me is how the Bills couldn't take home the trophy, how they couldn't get to the Super Bowl with this big of an outlier. I mean,
Yeah.
that's just you're at home looking at your year and saying, how did we not do this? How did we not take this to the end? So
Totally. Yeah.
dang.
To your point, Andy, the Bills last year were the first team in NFL history to have 30 or more passing touchdowns and 30 or more rushing touchdowns. Just insane. They had 32 rushing
Bonkers.
touchdowns. The last time an NFL team has had more than 32 rushing touchdowns was in 1976. So it's just an insane year for rushing touchdowns, turnover margin. Like I don't know. For me, I think drafting Josh Allen in the second or third round is a little rich. I think you're basically paying for what he did last year, not what he's going to do this year.
Mm.
And yeah,
I
I don't
think
know, man.
we had this conversation in person about what's better, to pay up for those top 5 quarterbacks or draft a later quarterback. And I think you hit the nail on the head when you told me the quarterbacks are just better this year. We had a huge income of rookies last year and they all turned out good. Like, teams
Yeah.
just have better quarterbacks now, and you're allowed to be a little bit more flexible in your fantasy draft of picking up a Bo Nix, picking up a Caleb Williams if you want to take that risk, right? And you don't have to pay for the huge
Yeah.
upside of Josh Allen or Lamar.
Right. Yeah. Like Jared Goff had an amazing year last year. Baker Mayfield out of nowhere had an amazing year. And then, yeah, we have 5 first-round quarterbacks going into year 2 this year. So there's just a lot of depth at the position. We're going to move on to the second face-melting stat that you need to know for 2025. And I'm talking about one-score games. NFL team records in one-score games. It actually gets talked about quite a bit by the national media as the season goes on. Famously, last year, the Kansas City Chiefs were 11-0 in one-score games. And it was like one of my favorite narratives from last year. Kept getting brought up because they just kept winning by 2 points, 3 points, by a field goal, by a blocked field goal. Like, it was just, yeah, it just kept happening, and it ended up being this incredible stat that they went 11-0. And it was funny, the Kirk Cousins Vikings, they had some outrageous stat like this a few years ago, and everyone was saying, "Oh, they're going to fall off next year. They're going to fall off next year because that's so outrageous." They were frauds, and they lost in the first round of the playoffs too.
Yup.
And yeah, that kind of bore out. It was like, yeah, one-score games. Like, you can point to coaching, you can point to efficient quarterback play, but like there's so much goes into the game of football. It's so complicated. You have 11 starters on offense, 11 starters on defense, special teams. Like, it's just so complicated. To go 11-0 in one-score games is nuts. Like, two things can be true at once. You can credit Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes and Spags on defense, like, but 11-0, I mean, that should bounce back to the median a little bit. Not all the way to the median, because they are an above average, coaching and game management and all that. But like, they're not going to go 11-0 again. And the offensive line got a little bit worse too. I don't know, Andy. What are your thoughts on the Chiefs?
Yeah, it's coaching. I'm looking up the Rams right now because we're talking about this coaching, basically X factor that the Chiefs have, and Patrick Mahomes. So there's no way that you should be allowed to go 11-0 in one score games. It just shouldn't be allowed, especially the Chiefs.
Totally. The Vikings, Lions, and Eagles also had great records in one-score games, but they also just had fantastic records. Like, they were great teams. So, of course, you're going to have a good record in one-score games. The opposite is true for the Patriots, Jaguars, and Giants. Terrible records in one-score games, but they're also just bad teams. So I don't think that that's super, like, that math checks out to me,
Mm-hmm.
And The Bengals, they were 4-7 in one-score games. I honestly thought it'd be worse just because of how snake-bitten they seemed to be. But to me, what I take out of that, 4-7 in one-score games, that means they won 4 games by just one score. So it's like the defense was so bad, it cost them games, and even the games that it didn't cost them, they were still winning like 33-30. You know, like it was these were still one-score games, like half their wins. The 49ers 2-6 in one-score games, so there's room for some positive regression there this year if they're a little more healthy, and they just get kind of that swing back that I'm talking about. But here's the real meat of this. This is what's going to melt your face, okay? The 10-7 Denver Broncos last year were 1-6 in one-score games. They had a rookie QB, and the offense got off to a real slow start last year, so, you know, you might not be surprised by that stat, but think about that. They lost 7 games. 6 of those were one-score games. So they only got blown out once. It was by the Ravens. And they won 10 games, but only one of those 10 wins was in a one-score game. So when they won by a lot, and when they lost, it was real close. Like, this was probably one of the best 10-7 teams of all time. We're going into year 2 of Bo Nix in the Sean Payton system. Bo Nix has not been in the same offensive system with the same offensive play caller since high school, and now he gets year 2 of Sean Payton with all the upgrades they made on offense this offseason. Like, holy cow. That's incredible. And then you couple that with what I just said about the Chiefs, who were 11-0 in one-score games. I think we could be seeing maybe a change of the guard this year. This could be something to take advantage of, honestly, with sports books or with your fantasy picks, however you want to play it. But like, Andy, you remember that game? We were calling for the Broncos to beat the Chiefs because even in the moment we saw how evenly matched these teams were, and we picked the Broncos to beat them, and the Chiefs blocked the game-winning field goal as time expired. So it's like just things like that, you know, if that doesn't happen, if it goes the other way this year with all the improvements the Broncos have made and Bo Nix not being a rookie, I love the Broncos this year.
Yeah, I love I was high on the Broncos, and then I read this stat from you, and it just skyrocketed them up my rankings. I am looking at last year, they had the highest point differential in the entire division, and they got 3rd place with 10 wins. So they almost doubled Kansas City point differential. I don't see how this team, if this team goes 50-50 in these one-score games that they did last year, they're a 13-win team, and they're fighting for first place in the AFC. I mean, this team is primed to make a huge jump, and I think this stat is explaining that very well.
Yeah, I totally agree. They brought over Hufanga and Greenlaw from the 49ers defense, and then they spent a first-round pick on another DB to play opposite Pat Surtain, who I believe is the reigning defensive player of the year. So, wheels up for the Broncos. That's all I got to say. I think their win total over-under is still at 9.5. So, I mean, you already know where we're at. So
take the over.
The next face-melting stat that you need to know for 2025, I always, every year, just like the turnover margin, every year I go back last year and I look at running back efficiency, and I separate that into yards before contact and yards after contact. We're going to start off talking about yards before contact. This is definitely an offensive line stat. The running back can get yards before contact with speed, if they just beat the defender to the edge. And vision helps too, but typically when it comes to vision, you're still at least getting touched, but that it does factor in, right? Being able to follow your lineman's blocks. So the top 10 running backs last year in yards before contact, and there's a minimum of 100 attempts to qualify. We had 46 qualifying running backs last year, so we're going to talk about the top quartile. That's the top 12 running backs. Number 1 is Saquon Barkley. Surprise, surprise. Number 2 is Jahmyr Gibbs, a half of a yard behind Saquon. So that's just a crazy outlier, but that's nothing we don't know. We knew Saquon was getting a bunch of yards before contact. I mean, 3.8, that's a decent yards per carry, and he was just getting that before even being touched last year.
Bonkers.
Yeah, that is bonkers. And I don't really see what's changing this year. Maybe just a little bit of regression, but I mean, they still have a dominant offensive line. Like, they didn't even have Kelsey. So
Right.
that's just incredible. Jahmyr Gibbs is second in the league at 3.3. Tied with him is Jerome Ford for the Cleveland Browns. Pretty great yards before contact. And what I take away from that weird stat, Jerome Ford's just like right above Derrick Henry and Jonathan Taylor. The Browns' offensive line is pretty good. They're really good at run blocking. So whoever their starter is, which we don't know right now, it could be Jerome Ford, but like that bodes well for whoever the Browns starter is. And
yeah, I don't know. That's a tough one. That's a tough one to say.
I mean, it's hard to say anything positive about the Browns, but I mean,
Right.
he's a third in the league in yards before contact. So he
True.
he had a nice runway. Let's see. Bucky Irving is up here, and we're going to go to the bottom quartile now. So the worst running backs before contact, guys who were just getting absolutely stuffed right around the line of scrimmage. A running back probably comes to your mind, Andy, to my mind as well. I couldn't wait to see where he fell on the list. But number one in terms of the worst was Gus Edwards for the Chargers. He had 1.2 yards before contact. So basically just running with his eyes closed. Number two was Rachaad White at 1.6, which is crazy because he's running behind the same line as Bucky Irving, who I just said was in the top quartile. Now we have Rachaad White, literally second worst in the league. So that's a pretty stark contrast. And he didn't qualify, but Sean Tucker, their third running back, was also he would have been in the top quartile. So this is purely a Rachaad White problem.
Yes.
And that really stood out to me. Like no wonder they switched over to Bucky Irving. And like they're not switching back. That's kind of what I took from this.
Right.
Our boy Kenneth Walker comes in at number 4, 1.7 yards before contact. Super unfortunate because the offensive line is just terrible. The rest of this list, it's a lot of like bowling ball, type running backs, short yardage running backs too, which makes sense, right? Like if it's 3rd and 1 and David Montgomery gets 2 yards, like his yards before contact is going to be miserable, but he did his job. So there's a little bit of that in here too, along with some just bad running back play. Yards after contact. It's what it sounds like, and we're going to do the same thing. So the top quartile for running backs yards after contact, again, shocker, Derrick Henry, number 1 in the league, 2.8 yards after contact. Tank Bigsby is number 2, the Tank. And look at what we have here. Bucky Irving, all 205 pounds of him, number 3 in the league in yards after contact. Those spin moves, juke moves that he's just like contact balance, whatever you want to call it. He's actually tied with his teammate Rachaad White. And elsewhere on the list, it's a lot of top running backs. Bijan, Jahmyr Gibbs, Josh Jacobs, James Conner.
Sure.
The bottom quartile. So again, yards after contact, this is just straight up running back stats. It's just like, how good are you? I mean, this correlates very strongly with PFF's like elusiveness rating. It takes in some other things into account as well, but yards after contact is probably the biggest one because it's just like, all right, there's no more line. It's just you and the defense. What can you give me? What can you give the offense? The worst running back in the league was Nick Chubb last year. Yikes. Tied with him, Alexander Madison was putrid for the Raiders. Kareem Hunt was woefully inefficient. There's some other names down here that aren't shocking. Travis Etienne, DeAndre Swift. It's yikes. So like Nick Chubb, I don't know that he'll ever be the same. He's got kind of an interesting opportunity this year with the Texans, but I'm totally staying away in all of my fantasy leagues because this is very yikes. And Kareem Hunt at 3rd, that was kind of a takeaway for me. Like, oh, okay. So, because the Chiefs were just so successful, that really surprised me. And Isaiah Pacheco coming off an injury could be a sneaky value this year. because they've got to be excited to have that guy back, considering
Yeah.
how
Yeah.
below average Kareem Hunt was.
Sure. I think the biggest thing that stands out on this list, and just comparing the top versus the bottom quartile, is there's really only about a little over a yard difference between Nick Chubb and Derrick Henry. So the bell curve is tight, right? And I think someone like Tyrone Tracy, like, I know you're really high on Scattaboo, and Tyrone Tracy is probably going to lose his job. You're probably right, but like, if the Giants' offensive line was just a little bit better and Tracy can just get an inch or two more, like that 1.7 becomes a 2.0.
Yeah.
And he's not even on this list. So maybe I'm giving more fuel to the fire for a guy like Scattaboo when I say stuff like that. But man, even just like Alvin Kamara, like this is his bread and butter right here, is getting contact and then getting them off and going for more yards. So to see him at the bottom, that also raised my eyebrows.
Yeah, Alvin Kamara, 10th worst in the league among qualified running backs after contact last year. Yeah, that is unfortunate. Yeah, he doesn't have the same speed. I think defenders are able to get a better angle on him last year. So yeah, that is definitely noteworthy. Good point there. And Jaleel McLaughlin and Javonte Williams were both in the bottom quartile for the Broncos last year. So the addition of R.J. Harvey and J.K. Dobbins makes a lot of sense when you see this, that they were just getting them just literally among the worst in the league of guys who got enough carries. And guys who didn't get enough carries, I wanted to point out that Isaac Guerendo, Christian McCaffrey's backup in San Francisco, if he had enough carries to qualify, he would have been number one, literally number one in this yards after contact. So that's pretty cool. Chase Brown is low on this list, but Zach Moss was even worse. DeAndre Swift is low on this list, but Roschon Johnson, his backup, was even worse. So I'm not super worried about them losing their jobs, but when it comes to efficiency and fantasy production, dynasty, like this is just something to keep in mind. These guys, they might be killing it when it comes to the passing game or whatever, but if you're not good in the NFL, you're gonna eventually lose your job, which is bad for dynasty. So you got to kind of keep one eye on both.
And in real life NFL too, if they're not getting those 2-3 yards to go get that touchdown that the coach is asking them to go do, they're going to get pulled, or they're going to get the quarterback's going to get that run. They're going to have to pass. Like, the coaches are not going to be able to depend on those running backs.
Totally. So obviously you combine these yards before and after contact. That's all the yards. You add them up. So overall yards per carry, Derrick Henry, number one. Saquon Barkley, a close second. Jahmyr Gibbs, a close third. Then Bucky Irving, and then Jerome Ford at 5. Bottom quartile, it's your typical suspects. It's Alexander Mattison, Nick Chubb, Gus Edwards, Kareem Hunt, and Travis Etienne. Other noteworthy names, our boy Kenneth Walker comes in at 7 with 3.7 yards per carry. I think everyone kind of knows that is indicative of the O-line and not Kenneth Walker. My mind specifically goes to a play where we had a new center for one game, and him and Geno had a miscommunication and snapped the ball over Geno's head when he wasn't paying attention. He just missed the snap. And Ken Walker had to sprint into the backfield. The ball just kept bouncing, and Kenneth Walker eventually recovered it and broke 4 tackles, brought the ball up a few yards, and it went into the stat sheet as a negative 18-yard run from Kenneth Walker.
Yikes.
So that's just a great example of the O-line ineptitude and Kenneth Walker doing everything he can to recover the fumble and try and save something. And just his stats look terrible, but he's a much better player. I can't say the same for everyone else in this bottom quartile that you're seeing on your screen. But boy, I had one last point with all this. I looked at running backs who were in the top quartile before contact and the bottom quartile after contact. So who are guys who might just be a product of their situation in the offense behind their O-line, but isn't actually getting you much when it's just them? Three names were in the top quartile before and the bottom quartile after contact. Those names are Jaleel McLaughlin. He's been replaced. Tyrone Tracy. They drafted Cam Scatabo. And, man, I mean, Cam Scatabo, he's basically Mr. yards after contact. He was in college,
Right.
at least. Like,
Right. Right.
so that's super interesting to me, although I'm sure Tracy will start week 1 as the starter. And then Chase Brown's that other name. So to me, that's, not red alert, but it's kind of like a yellow warning light, a little warning light coming on. So he has this year for sure. He's the lead back. I mean, the Bengals just released Zach Moss. So, like, he's the guy this year, and he has this year to sort of change that narrative. But, I'm definitely going to be looking that for him. That's a little warning light for Chase Brown dynasty managers, I'd say.
Sure. Even drafting this year, in my opinion, I'm still 50-50 on Chase Brown. So this is giving me some more insight.
Yeah, and I mean, you got to pay up with Chase Brown.
Exactly.
He's
exactly.
in PPR leagues. I think it's probably still worth it. But yeah, it's a risky one. This next face-melting stat you need to know for 2025. We're talking about market share and vacated targets. Everyone talks about vacated targets. Not everyone talks about vacated touchdowns, which I think is interesting. We'll get into that. But first of all, I just want to hone in on wide receivers who had a large target market share last year, and their situation is improving. So, Andy, we'll go through these one by one, and I'll flip it to you, and you just give me your thoughts on each of these sort of situations for wide receiver ones. Garrett Wilson had 26% of the target market share last year, and Davante Adams he was a Jet, and now he's no longer a Jet. So, and they didn't really add anyone else. So, with already a massive target share, and it's sure to go up this year, is Garrett Wilson interesting to you?
Oh yeah, he has his college quarterback throwing to him. That should be an instant plus up.
I didn't even. Wow. Yeah, you're right. I didn't connect that. What is he going, like the third round?
Yeah, end of the second, beginning of the third right now.
Yeah, it depends on your league size, I guess. I'm just really nervous because the Jets just have so much chaos and the funk and the curse, obviously, the Jets curse.
Sure.
I'm still nervous, but like all signs point to Garrett Wilson being like an elite volume play for fantasy. All right, next, Calvin Ridley. He had 23.7% target market share, and he just upgraded from Will Levis to number 1 overall pick Cam Ward. So you're going from probably the least accurate QB to the best rookie quarterback. He's still a rookie, but I mean, man, Calvin Ridley had just over 1,000 yards last year. What are your thoughts on Calvin Ridley this year?
I think you're going to kind of have some regret when you first draft him. I think it's going to take Cam Ward a little while to get going in the NFL. And so therefore Calvin Ridley might not see that wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2 action, but halfway through the year, just got to stay patient, and I think it will come through. The fact that he had over 1,000 yards with Will Levis, I would have said the under 100%. I would have not believed you if I hadn't seen this just before.
Yeah, he had a strong finish to the year, but yeah, in fantasy football, that first month is really like where you make your impression. So
right,
yeah, that is true. So it will be probably a rough start with Cam Ward, and that Titans team is not good. I believe in Cam Ward. I believe in Calvin Ridley, but it is tough. It's tough to swallow. Similar to Garrett Wilson. The next wide receiver we're going to talk about is Davante Adams. Last year, he had a 23.8% target market share, and this year, he's joining the LA Rams. So he's going from 40-year-old Aaron Rodgers to Matthew Stafford, and more importantly, he's going from the Jets coaching staff and play callers to Sean McVay in that incredible Rams offense. And they have a ton of vacated targets this year with Cooper Kupp and Demarcus Robinson and a few others leaving. So, in my opinion, this is probably the most interesting name on this list, and we'll spend a little more time talking about the vacated targets and touchdowns and things. But Andy, what are your thoughts on Davante Adams and his market share?
Yeah, I think you have to pay a mid third round pick for him right now, and
Third or
honestly,
fourth.
depending,
Yeah.
yeah, third or fourth, yeah. So honestly, depends on if you. I wouldn't like him as my wide receiver one, but I love him as my wide receiver two. And you're right, going to Sean McVay. It does. I mean, even if Aaron Rodgers came to the Rams, you have Sean McVay now. Like, this is such an upgrade to everything he's ever seen, basically since Green Bay.
Yeah. Yeah, well put. I mean, this offense has just produced for fantasy. Running backs, wide receivers, you name it. Like he's in such a good spot. He's so safe. Like him as my wide receiver too. That's like that's wrapped up in a snuggie on Christmas Eve, by the fire with hot chocolate. Like that's as comfy as you can get. So,
Right, right.
all right, I got one more name. We're going to talk about DJ Moore. He had a 26.6, which is the largest number I've said so far. 26.6% target market share for the Bears last year. And now Keenan Allen, who was kind of like a target hog, he had a bunch of those like short slants. He just very friendly target for Caleb Williams. He's gone now. And yes, they brought in some rookies, but you got Caleb Williams year 2 now with Ben Johnson. So the whole offense is going to just take a massive upgrade. DJ Moore, who was already like kind of a dominant wide receiver one in terms of target market share, and no Keenan Allen. I think a lot of people might be overthinking it with DJ Moore. Am I wrong?
Yeah, I think you are wrong. Honestly, I
Okay,
think.
let's hear it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that this is a Rome. This is a Rome year. I remember a Seahawks fan and having JSN, a
What do they
rookie, an
know?
all-star, right? Like, and he just did nothing. And his very first year, granted, that was with Shane Waldron. And guess what happened to Rome this year? He had Shane Waldron. He's a rookie, and Rome just kind of fell flat. But then year 2 of JSN, I'm just seeing the same transition for Rome. And I think a lot of this is going to go his way. Yes, they drafted some weapons, but I think that all fits for Roma Dunze to have a breakout second year. This is going to be his year. And DJ Moore, he's still going to have over 20%, probably over 22% market share. He's not going away, but where you're drafting him right now is exactly where he's going to land, maybe his floor. So, yes, I think we're overthinking it, but at the same time, is the ceiling there like it was a couple years ago? No, I don't think so.
That's interesting. Yeah, I love that point you made about JSN having Shane Waldron in his rookie year and just it going horribly. And yeah, Rome Odunze had to do the same thing. All right, we're going to talk about vacated receiving touchdowns. And I'm going to contradict myself a little bit because at the top, I talked about how turnovers were not a sticky stat. Well, touchdowns aren't really a sticky stat either when it comes to individual players. But I think you'll see where I'm going by the end of this because right now I'm talking about team like offense touchdowns, not so much specific players. And I'm talking about the fact that they're vacated, they're going to go to a different player this year. So I'm not calling for the same thing to happen again.
Sure.
So there's 2 teams at the very top of this list with the most vacated receiving touchdowns. What do I mean? I mean players who had receiving touchdowns last year. They're no longer on that offense. So the Rams and Titans, 14 out of their 22 receiving touchdowns last year were scored by players who are no longer on the team. So we'll talk about the Rams. Cooper Kupp had 6 receiving touchdowns. He gone. Demarcus Robinson, their wide receiver 3, led the team with 7 receiving touchdowns. He also gone. And so now you have Puka and Devontae Adams. And I mean, what they added a second round tight end. They've never used tight ends. Tutu Atwell. Like I'm scratching my brain to even think where else these touchdowns are going to go besides Puka and Devontae. I think those are two of the best picks you can make at the beginning of your draft. Andy, do you have any thoughts on that?
Nope, I'm high on Puka, and seeing this stat, I was like, man, this just gives me even more reason to draft him at the end of the first round, early second. If he lands there, he should be going earlier because of this stat.
Yeah, his ADP is pretty high, but like of those wide receivers around him, like injury is the only reason why you would pick anyone else. Like Puka Nacua is set up for just massive success this year, and we already talked about Davante Adams. So the other team is the Titans. Same exact stats: 14 out of 22 receiving touchdowns were caught by players who are no longer on the team. So Nick Westbrook-Akine famously had 9 receiving touchdowns. He's now a backup on the Dolphins. So those receiving touchdowns, they got to go somewhere. I mean, I guess the Titans could just have less than 22 receiving touchdowns, but still 9 just from one player. That's got to go somewhere else. Calvin Ridley only had 4 last year. I think that's going to go up. We're going to see some positive regression there. And then the other wide receiver they added was Tyler Lockett. So, yeah, I don't know. It's hard because, you got Cam Ward coming in, lots of unknowns, but 22 isn't that high of a number, Andy.
No, it's not. I'm looking at his touchdowns from last year as well. He had 13 passing touchdowns. Granted, he only played 12 games, but do we think the Titans are going to have more passing touchdowns than they did last year? Because of the new rookie quarterback, we probably have to say yes. So really, this number is even smaller than what we are probably predicting is going to happen for the Titans. There's probably going to be even more passing touchdowns, and the fact that these guys are gone means there's even more opportunity for Ridley, for Tyler Lockett, for the tight end, etc.
Totally. Yeah, like I know he's a rookie, but like going from Will Levis to Cam Ward is an upgrade.
It's an upgrade. Yeah.
Even in his first year. So, there's tons of vacated touchdowns. I think we're going to see just a pendulum swing for Calvin Ridley when it comes to scoring touchdowns, but that is a projection. So we'll see. But yeah, Titans, so much room for receiving touchdowns there. Number 3 on this list of vacated receiving touchdowns is the Jets. Jets had 31 receiving touchdowns last year. 11
Aaron
of those
Rodgers
are now vacated. Right, yeah, Rodgers kind of had a sneaky good year. He also turned the ball over a bunch, and it was a disaster in like end game situations, but he was throwing passing touchdowns. And so, like I said, Davante Adams is gone. So this to me is arrow up for, yes, Garrett Wilson, but also Tyler Conklin and other players were getting in the end zone. So this to me, Mason Taylor, whoever their wide receiver 2 is right now.
I think this bodes well for Justin Fields more than anybody. Obviously Garrett Wilson, but this is going to be a new offense. We can't expect the Jets to have the same number of passing touchdowns. Yeah. So if they want to score, it's going to be Breece Hall, it's going to be Justin Fields, it's going to be Garrett Wilson. And I'm nervous to touch Breece Hall in fantasy. So if I'm going the Jets at all, it's really just Garrett Wilson and Justin Fields is a flex or a flyer on the waiver wire.
So next is the Steelers. They threw 21 receiving touchdowns. They threw 21 passing touchdowns. 8 of those were caught by like George Pickens and others who are no longer on the team. So there's a lot of opportunity for DK Metcalf and Jonnu Smith. I think we know that. Like DK Metcalf's being drafted pretty highly.
Right.
But yeah, like there's competition at tight end, so that feels tough. But like, man, the Steelers, I think they improved at quarterback this offseason, acquiring Aaron Rodgers. He threw 31 on the Jets. Maybe he throws 25 to 30 on the Steelers. And the size of the pie actually goes up, let alone how many slices are available. So yeah, I don't know. What do you think about DK Metcalf this year?
That's a great way, what you just said about pie. Can't ever complain talking about pie. I'm high on DK Metcalf this year. It's going to be an interesting battle the first month and a half of the season between Aaron Rodgers and Artie Smith. Like, it's going to be a battle between OC and quarterback. Like, who's going to win out by the end of the year? Obviously, I think they're going to have to make the switch to go more Aaron-style offense than Arthur Smith. But regardless, I don't care. I'm in on DK. I'm in on Jonnu Smith. Everybody else, I'm kind of just pushing to the wayside in Pittsburgh.
speaking of Jonnu Smith, the next team is the Dolphins. 8 out of 22 receiving touchdowns were scored by players no longer on the team. All 8 of those were Jonnu Smith.
Of course.
So,
of course.
boy, I don't know what to make of this, though, because the Dolphins, they traded him away, and he was just wide open. This was like a second half of the year thing. NFL defenses were playing Tua with like 2, sometimes 3 safeties on the field, and that just left the short middle of the field open for Jonnu all the time, and they just kind of spammed it at the end of the year. And Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle really suffered because of that. So with him gone, Darren Waller in, is this opportunity for Darren Waller, or are they going to try and change how they score touchdowns?
Does this become the Westbrook-Nikine position?
He just absorbs all of it.
I mean, can you really trust Darren Waller at this point? I would say no.
Waddle's never been a touchdown guy either.
Exactly. And the defenses are still going to do the same thing. They're still going to put 2-3 guys deep to cover Tyreek and Waddle on the outside. So all this vacated space in the middle, I don't really see Waller being that guy. So I don't know. Maybe it's Westbrook-Ikine. Maybe it's even more fuel to the fire for Devon Achane. This one is the toughest one to gauge, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's really fair. I totally get it. And, that whole offense is just like one like Jenga block being pulled away from being a total disaster with Tua and his health. So, maybe just staying away from the Dolphins. But anyways, last team we're going to talk about here when it comes to vacated receiving touchdowns, it's the Bills. We already talked a lot about the Bills, but I just wanted to say that they're tied with the Steelers and Dolphins with 8 vacated receiving touchdowns. And the player who led the Buffalo Bills in receiving touchdowns last year is gone. Can you name the player? Yes, I know you can because you got it in front of you, Andy. Tell us who it is.
Mac Hollins.
Mac Hollins scored more touchdowns he caught more touchdowns than Khalil Shakir, than Keon Coleman. Amari Cooper was there for a minute, caught some touchdowns. He loves throwing passing touchdowns to the running back, too. That's a huge problem in Buffalo. There's so many mouths to feed. I think they had 13 different players catch a touchdown pass last year.
Wow.
And I thought that was one of those outliers that we talked about at the beginning of the Bills. I went back a couple years. It's not an outlier. They have like double-digit players catching a touchdown every year since Josh Allen's been Josh Allen. So that's not abnormal. But Mac Hollins led the team with just 5, and now he's gone. So there's opportunity for this to be a little bit more consolidated, and there's opportunity for there to be, a new leader in the wide receiver room when it comes to touchdowns. Is that guy going to be Khalil Shakir or Keon Coleman? Andy, how are you feeling about those guys and Josh Allen's weapons?
Neither it's not gonna go towards the wide receiver room. It's gonna go towards the tight end room. They still have Dawson Knox. They still have Dalton Kincaid. Those guys were basically non-existent last year, and I think Josh Allen loves throwing to those tight ends, especially for touchdowns. I could see the leader having like 6 or 7 touchdowns of the team. It's not going to be that crazy, but I don't trust any of those wide receivers to go up and get a ball. I trust those 2 giant tight ends that he has.
That makes me so uncomfortable because when it comes to certain players who just like burn you for fantasy, like if they're not on my team, then I have no problem buying back in. I feel like I'm buying low, like CMC is the poster child for this, where like I didn't have any CMC last year, so I'm perfectly fine taking him at a discount this year. And same with a couple other players who have disappointed but now look like they're primed and ready. I did draft Dalton Kincaid last year in some big spots, and he burned me. And so now, look, he's just another year into that system. It takes a bit for tight ends. We know this, unlike rookie wide receivers a lot of the time. Rookie tight ends, young tight ends, it takes them a few years to really come into their primes. And now there's a lot of vacated targets and opportunities, and he's a good red zone threat, but I don't know if I can do it. I kind of like Keon Coleman. I kind of like Keon Coleman just with one of my last picks in a redraft. Like maybe he takes that year 2 leap. And if not, I'll drop him. That's kind of where I'm at. But
yeah, I'm not saying to draft these guys, but that's my guess of where those vacated touchdowns are going to go.
Sure. All right. Well, hopefully that melted you guys' faces. That's all we got for this episode. But coming up, we got some actual like hard-hitting fantasy advice. We might do a mock draft. We might just go through. I know Andy, you and I are drafting somewhat soon. And we have our first actual draft of the year, so we could review that. Yeah, in 10 days from this recording. So by the time you're listening to this, it's going to be pretty soon. Stick with us. We got a lot more content coming. We appreciate it. Like, subscribe, all the things. Andy, anything left to say to the people?
See ya.
Thanks a ton for making it to the end of the episode. You're a real one. Don't forget to like and subscribe. That's a free, easy way to support the show, and it really helps us out. And leave us your comments down below if you're on YouTube, or send in your questions at thefantasyflowpodcast@gmail.com. Until next time.